One of the most ambitious is the new Media Freedom Act, EMFA. Carlos Aguilar Paredes is the chair of the newly created European Board for Media Services, and he'll explain the scope, the goals, and the next steps in implementing this key regulation. Carlos, benvingut.
Thank you. Gracias. Morning, everybody. As I want to thank, first of all, CIRCOM for having me and for giving me the opportunity to stay in contact with you, who are the ones who are really doing the job, to communicate and to transmit the information to the citizens. I have to apologize in advance because my narrative is absolutely different from my previous colleagues, Raúl and Demagogue, and it's absolutely much more boring. But watching you sitting at the end of the files, I have the feeling to be again in my classroom in the university. So I come from the academy. I has been in academy the last 15 years. Before of that, I was teaching in high school. And I really know how difficult it is that the new generations arrive to the war and engage with the problem. And these new narratives can help. But we need to introduce them in this world of the news, especially nowadays. No? So I will try to introduce you what is EMFA, which one is the role, the expected role of the European Board for Media Services, which I have the honor to be the president this year. And there was one question in the panel that I want to start with that, is that if we can help, that the new European Board for Media Services can help. I really believe we are here for help, but we will be able to help depending on how much you are defining yourself, how much you are helping you, as Demagog has said. And because it's not a question only about what the law can do, what the regulation can do, is especially if you are trying to understand EMFA, it's a way of how you are defining yourself. How are you following the rules that say what is a journalist and what is not, what is a press media and what is not. And this is part of the solution. So knowing that that would be a boring presentation, that is me, I just want to start with a quote of Renate Schoder, the director of the European Federation of Journalists, that say that really EMFA is expected by the profession because it's not perfect at all, for sure. But at the end, for the first time, at the political level, we are trying to face the problems that has been defined here, that all the situations that Damagog perfectly has explained. And it has been done on a regulation. On a regulation means that is directly applicable on all the European countries. There is a big difference with the directive, the Audiovisual Media Service Directive, that has to be transposed by the at the national level by any country. Demagog again was right. Most countries will have the temptation to say, no, okay, we are just doing that. We don't have to do anything just to accomplish with that. But there is a big difference because at the end, it's an absolute obligation for any country just to follow these rules, even if they have not transposed in any way that. And that it's a great difference. So that is like a big resume about what is expected. But in the meantime, it's in the back of me. Let me try to explain the field. The last 5, 6, 7 years at the legislative level in the European Union, there is a big concern about the democracy that is in risk. And to tackle this risk, it's very clear that without independent media, without pluralistic media, without the capacity of the citizens to arrive to those media, the democracy is in a big danger. So this move to create or to modify several legislative pieces, ENFA is the most close related to the journalists and to the media, but at the same time, we don't have to forget that this is part of a package, a legislative package that include the Digital Media Act and the Digital Service Act, who are dealing with the big platforms and how the big platforms are affecting all the ecosystem, especially in the media landscape. So this is the ENFA coming to the force process. The European Board for Media Services, and we all call them Media Board, is shorter, coming to force in February, but the most of the articles of the ENFA come into force just the next month of August. Again, that means that it's directly applicable. But who has to apply that? That is the question. Who has to apply that? At the end, who has to apply that at the member states? In a few cases, we will intervene supporting the European Commission or responding the claims of the stakeholders, it could include the media, or any other ones. And now, as Media Board, we have a huge work plan just preparing us for receive these claims. So our goal is to help to the implementation of ENFA and to the implementation as much as possible in a unified way across the Union. We have cross-country cooperation procedures just for trying to help in that. So ENFA defines rights for the recipients of the media. The citizens have the right to access to a plurality of editorial independent media content. This is big words, but how legislative is trying to do it possible? It's trying to do it possible applying different strategies inside the same legislative piece. One is protecting journalists. Several articles are dedicated to protect the sources of the journalists, to legally establish that some actions could not be done against the journalists, trying to guarantee the editorial independence of the editors, especially the public service, recognizing the importance of the public media services. And this is one part. On the other side, I will go there later. What is important in ENFA is that if we want to have a landscape with pluralistic editorial independent media, they need to be economically sustainable. And there is many intermediaries in this economic war who are affecting the survival of the media at the economic terms. For instance, the very large online platforms. For instance, the audience measurement. You know, all of you know perfectly that those numbers are the direct relation of how much your advertisement is paying you. But who knows how that is working? Which one of the rules under the audience measurement are ruling? Do you know? Someone here in the room knows it? Not even the national TVs knows that, or the big private TV knows that. So ENFA includes the creation on behalf of the European Commission, helped by the board, about rules of transparency in this audience measurement. So it's trying to cover from both sides. From one side, it's trying to cover giving the editorial independence and the capacity to the journalists to do their job. And on the other way, it's trying to average the level playing field. And another aspect I will introduce later. is about the public resources that arrive to the media. The transparency about the public advertisement, the public support, directly or indirectly. Most of the media living only for that. And how you can compete with another media if someone is being supported. I'm not talking about public media, private media. If they are being supported, but public is taking money in one way or the other. There is not equilibrium. So the goal of ENFA is accomplish real level playing field, and it's trying to do forcing the transparency in all this sector. So again, we have, that means that the ENFA provides with different obligations and, for instance, accommodating the remote, just for be able to access, because one of the intermediaries are the manufacturers of the TV and smart TVs and so on. So when you turn on your TV now, your smart TV, you have a screen who has previously decided which one is the first thing they are offering you. And that is part of the economic system that has to be addressed, has to be understood, and that at the end the user should have the opportunity to change easily that to access what they want. Okay? This is related to a previous legislative piece, the Audiovisual Media Service Directive, where the Article 7A talk about the prominence. So member states at the national level could decide what members has to be prominent, for instance, the public service media. But in the directive, it depends at the national level to adopt or not that idea of prominence. So Spain, for instance, didn't adopt that, but other countries did. There is a huge difference in the implementation. In ENFA, it's turning that so every user will have the opportunity, should have the opportunity to change the settings addressing to their own prominence if they want. So more rights as the rights of the media service providers, as the rights at the end of the journalists. No? Member states may not, you read the text, but it's easy to understand, perfectly. Those are the things that they could not do. They cannot interfere. They cannot interfere not directly with you, intercept, spy, etc., etc. But not only you. They don't have to do that on your techniques, colleagues, family, and so on. And that is common sense, but for the first time is wrote in a European law, and the European level directly applicable. It not depends that one member state want to not follow that. That exists, has to be followed. And that is one of the big goals of ENFA. Obviously, there is exceptions. I was talking with some of you before coming. As far as I know, it was the last article approved by the ENFA, because some member states want to preserve exceptions to the ability of the journalists to preserve their sources, for instance, in case of national security and so on. And that has sense too, but again, has to be followed, has to be properly adopted and properly used, because we really know reality that could be important in some point, but it could not be an excuse just to circumvallate all the other rights. No? So that was a difficult point to acquire. Okay, there is more ways in which ENFA is trying to protect. So when the media service providers are offering news and content on current affairs, has to be ensured that the editorial decisions can be made freely within the editorial policy followed by the media service provider. That was exactly what Demagog were referring. There is a huge temptation about the owners, or even for the maybe politicians, it depends on, just to interfere. Again, as journalists, this is the minimum that you need to do the job. But this is road, and it has to be accomplished. Will be difficult to acquire, for sure. But sorry, Demagog, because I'm using your words too much. But as he said, this is the first step, and this want to introduce a minimum common understanding of what the media is and the news media are, and how has to be observed by everyone, but the journalists, but the politician, but the owners, for everyone. And again, that's because it's important. Obviously, if there existing conflicts of interest must be public. Again, a transparency obligation. And let me stop here. I have several, I'm out of time. I have several slides, but I will only try to show you the 3 or 4 following ones. And this is a special one, because what is a media service? When you try to define it, it's very difficult, because obviously we know the ones who are television, on-demand media, radio, audio podcasts, press publications. But if you look at the end, in the definition, in the recitals of ENFA, they clearly include the freelancers on that. That was another huge discussion in order to configure ENFA. Because nowadays we cannot define a news source or a media service as a corporation on that. It's changed. It's about the work that they are doing. So, and this is a very important inclusion on that. They have to be working in some of these options. And again, what is not, obviously, are the user-generated content. But what is important is that as far as they have not economic intention, because if not, they become a freelancer in some way. So there is a narrow line about what can be considered media and what not. And here, at all the ENFA has a very important economic view. If you are including user-generated content, and you are doing that because it becomes your job, your income sources, then you can be considered as a media. But if you are doing because you are expressing your opinion, you are free to do that. You don't have all the obligations, but not even the rights of the media. Okay, then come the public service media, most of you are. I have only take some quotes of the recitals, because in ENFA, this distinction about the public media service and the private service, media services, is very important. And again, it's because Demagog said before, because they have really an obligation to the citizens, because they are being paid by the public funds. So, who has the obligation to guarantee that again? That's the question. Because, okay, now it's right. Okay, but who has to do that? Our member states. Member states should ensure, and here is the big list, the member states, and I am saying it so many times because they are, has to ensure that the public media services are editorially and functionally independent. They have to ensure that the appointment and the dismissal of the head of managers of the member, and to guarantee the independence of the public media service provider, has to be clear, has to be known in advance, has to be exceptional, And that has to be this way, because without that, it's not possible to do the other. You know, if we don't accomplish the second one, it's very difficult to do, or almost impossible to do the first one. The third one is that they have to be properly funded. Without the correct funding, you will not accomplish none of your objectives, none of your goals. And there is a missing part of that. Apologize for that, because I was trying to include that. The Article 5 of ENFA, please read it, has a fourth point that say that the member states have to designate an independent body just to guarantee that they are accomplishing with that. We can have a big discussion about the self-regulator as me are really an independent body. Absolutely, yeah? I want to face that in a coffee with you, with all of you, when you want. But we are trying to guarantee, law is trying to guarantee. And that means that when you wrote it, you have to search for the best way in order to do that. For instance, the national regulator has not the same mandate that the parliament. We are elected for 6 years. I cannot be renewed. It's sad that, but I know that my mandate ends. And in the directive exists some ways to try to guarantee the independence of the body, of these bodies. And again, it's a second opportunity just to guarantee that. Going back, it's important to know, what is important, I mean, to know for you is that all these obligations as of the member states, and if they are not accomplished, they are going against a European law. And now you can claim against that. Let me show you another aspect. Okay, what means that you are a media, then you have to accomplish with several obligations, and not big ones, at easy ones. Your legal name, the name of your direct or indirect holders. If you are directly or indirectly part of a public services, the name of the hours in the sense of the Article 36 of the, what does it mean? It means the real hours. You know, in Spain, the law say that you, in the private TVs, in the media, you need to be explicit with the hours. But you only need to explicit the first level of that. You know, and that could be a company with only one member. But this company is owned at itself with a big corporation, 100%. But this is not transparent now. ENFA imposed the obligation that become transparent. And that is a new big step in order to transparency and to guarantee that the media really work as media. Should be clear too, and should be transparent, the annual amounts of public funds allocated of state advertisement. You all know what I am talking, thus I will not go forward on that. And two, and is an obligation just clarify if you are receiving funds for a third country institution or public or government and so on, not only the national ones. I'm sure I am out of time, so I want just moving to this one. And after that, I will open the questions that could be much more interesting. Which is the relation between the media and the very large online platforms? No, is another tricky question. Article 80 of ENFA give a special treatment to the media services in relation to moderation, because sometimes moderation means censor, means suspension, means so many things. First question is, who has right to this special treatment? Whose? And again, and here is when I say that it's necessary that you has to be part of that, is because of that. Because, okay, you have accomplished with all the transparency rules. We have your name, your address, how many incomes are you receiving. But in front of platform, you have to say if you are following in your editorial responsibility, which rules, which regulation rules, which co-regulation rules, which legal rules. Again, what does it mean? What that means is that who is defining what is a media are yourself across your own regulation, your co-regulation procedures, your associations. Then those ones who are following these ones should be considered as a media by the platforms. And then start the process. So before that some content can be removed in order to some rules of moderation, they have to be communicated with 24 hours, and you have to start a dialogue with the platform. And even if you are removed, if you are believing that the platform is not working accurately with you, any reasons, you can start a process of dialogue with the platform that is established. Is long. I know, it's long. And it will not be useful for the first one, I know. But at the end of the stage, if you don't agree with the platform, the media is not agree with the platform, you can ask for an opinion of the European Board for Media Services. And then the European regulators, we will have the obligation to analyze the situation and just to express an opinion. And if necessary, just to not impose, but at least say which measures are necessary on behalf of the platforms. It's a long process, I know. It's not perfect, I know, but at least it gives, again, a special protection to the media in front of the intermediaries. And that is new. And that is part of the solution in this idea about how important it is that the users can reach the news in no matter the intermediary. Okay. Okay. I have some other ones, but if you agree, organization, I don't know how much time I have, because my clock here down is in 0. So I can still follow in it. I've been a teacher for years. I can talk for hours. Anyway, the media board can express opinion on mergers too. And now for the private media, this is an important issue, because if you have ever seen the pluralist report in Europe, every time there is few media organizations because of the mergers, because that's a business. So the question is, when a merger is affecting the pluralists in the union. So when it's expected that a merger affect to the pluralists in the union, again, the national regulators has to express an opinion. And this is an absolutely novelty. And I have been in the competition bureau of the CNMC for 3.5 years. When you analyze a merger, the only important thing are the averages. This is affecting more than 30% of the market. Here in Spain, you always know the BBA and the Santander one. It's on all the news for months. But what happens when a merger is affecting the media? Because until now, the only analyzing aspect was the economic one. But sometimes a little increase or decrease of the economic impact on a country is not directly related with the pluralism. Because maybe 80% of the media are following one editorial line, and only a 10% or a 5% are following the other one. What happens if this merge make disappear this pluralist part? This is the part that has to be analyzed now. And this, again, is absolutely new in the legislation, because this analysis has to be done with the national audiovisual authorities, not by the competition authorities. That's a novelty too. Okay. Yeah?
They were taking, well, it was super interesting. We
No,
are,
no, I know it. I know I'm very interesting, but I am suffering because of you.
We're running a little bit behind schedule. So, but we can take just a couple of quick questions.
Yeah.
So you have to type really fast.
Okay.
So hopefully the system works fast this time. But it's, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of questions.
No,
but
no, for
remember
sure.
that you can keep the questions coming, and also we'll have lunch together later. So.
Cool. Yeah,
The conversation
we have
can
the opportunity to answer us in private.
Okay, how are the new security laws in Europe undermining the EMFA Act? Could you give some examples? In many countries, the management board of public media is just elected by a simple non-cross-party majority. Can EMFA regulate it somehow?
Okay.
So let's take these two.
The first one is a difficult one, because the new security laws, when I was talking about the Article 4, are more or less in the same lines. It's supposed that not be interfering these security lines on the rights of the journalists to do their work in the editorial independence, but at the same time that forced to introduce some safeguards in the Article 4, so are there. We know that we expected that don't go beyond that. The second one, the rules for elected the boards, the national boards, the independent national board, are in the Audiovisual Media Service Directive. And this forced to the member states to guarantee that everyone do it its own. For instance, in Spain, it's for simple majority. And we have to go to the parliament, but we all know we are proposed by political parties. But at the end, we have to be independent. That's how you can guarantee that, especially with the term of the mandate. You cannot repeat in Spain. In some countries, you can repeat only for one mandate. And at the end, I am responsible for taking my decisions and for all my life. No, so, but it's always will be the shadow on the national regulators. That is that ENFA is not intervening in that anymore. Here, the difference is that in the board of media, we have to take the decisions by 2/3 majority. So even if you are suspicious of some of us as not at all independent, the decision of the board only can be adopted by a qualified majority. So it's again trying to guarantee this independence of the board, of the media board.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much,
Thank
Carlos.
you to all of you.
Thank you. Okay.